Good afternoon. Broadcasting live with our studio audience from the world famous Matterhorn International Convention Center and Culinary University in the metropolis of Elkhart, home of the Elkhart Lions, right? Okay. And home of the best service club on the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Rotary. Welcome to Rotary, an organization making a difference here and around the world. Rotary's international theme this year is, say it with me if you wouldn't mind, Rotary opens opportunities. Please, tone it down. And join Fran Connor with the invocation, pledge, and four-way test. Fran, take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is always so exciting to come in and have Bill do his. Makes me feel like we're going to go out and wrestle and get everybody fired up. So we are in spring, the season of growth. It's a little gloomy and dreary out there today, but you know, God just blesses us every day. It was a beautiful weekend of sunshine, and we are getting ready to celebrate Mother's Day next weekend. For those of you who might have forgotten, remember the mother, thank you, the mother of your children, so that might be your wife or someone you love. Remember your own mom if you're still blessed to have them around. But in honor of Mother's Day this month, every week we will be having a female invocation leader. So let's hear it for the women. I think at this point in our society, it is still safe to say that you are all here because of a female mother. Iffy for you. Okay. So join me in a prayer for mothers. And I know we love and honor our mothers. Lord, we pray for all mothers. Beautiful and wonderful, they fill the earth. Gracious in your call, they carry life. In a bond of love, they bring forth a child. We ask you to bless all mothers today and this week. May they feel the joys of motherhood every day. In all their struggles, giving us a livelihood. May your love and compassion be with them for good. May every mother, whether natural or adopted, feel this week the pride and beauty of a family they bear. Through all pain and sorrow, Lord, deliver them. In your strength and grace, may they always be healthy and loved. Amen. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Fran. And Peter Norton, would you please tell us, do we have any guests or busy Rotarians?
All right, good morning. We have some guests today. Jim Rickoff has a guest. And his guest is Don Harper. Deb Oza.
My guest today is my good friend and husband, Dave Oza.
And she's brother Oza. And they claim to be friends. Steve Dahlheimer. Stephanie Kroll is his guest for those of you at home. Also, announcements are coming, and I'll start the first one. As people are getting vaccinated and restrictions are easing, we are exploring starting Thirsty Thursday once again. And so there'll be information coming out about that soon.
Thank you, Peter, and welcome Don, Dave, and Stephanie. Appreciate your being here. We had a County Road 6 cleanup. Saturday, there were 16 Rotarians and 13 Interact students. It was great to see them all. It's amazing how after they were done, they really wolfed down the donuts. And it was tremendous. And there's a early picture of us. It was a great day for it. And I picked up Trish. Is Ashley Bowen here today? There you are back there, Ashley. She and I were partnered up. It was great to spend that half an hour, 30, 40 minutes just chatting as we picked up masks and sardine cans and cigarette butts and stuff. It's a great opportunity, so I highly recommend it. Now, I've got something a little different here. So bear with me. It's Candy Yoder's birthday today. She's not here, she's in California.
Hello?
Candy,
Yes?
let's all sing happy birthday to Candy Yoder. Can we please? Today's your birthday, right, Candy?
Yes, today's my birthday, Bill.
All right, ready? One, gotta belt it out so we can all hear it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Candy. Happy birthday to you.
Oh, that's the best gift ever. I just accept that. I wasn't there in person.
Well, we'll see you again. Happy birthday, Candy.
Thank you, Bill.
You bet.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right. Other announcements? Any other announcements for anybody else? Eric, anything? You good? Okay, today, Dr. Steve Tallheimer, Superintendent of Elkhart Schools. Thanks for being with us, Steve. Next week, well, also this coming Thursday at the morning division, Thursday at the Aquatic Center, 7:00 a.m. About produce safety. It sounds very interesting. An individual from the Purdue Food Service Division, as well as the Indiana State Department of Agriculture. Next Monday, Alan Strike. Remember his radio show? Sound off? And a special presentation during that as well. The following Monday, and I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do video with this for a couple of reasons, logistics as well as security. We're up toward 70 attendees in person at this, and it's at Jack Smith's new car museum building on Aeroplex Drive, just south of the Elkhart Airport. And then the 24th, Eric, you are going to be talking about origami. I never know how to spell origami, but anyway, I can say it at least. So it'll be great. And my wife and I, Debbie and I, were there Saturday, and it's really interesting to see. Which is a nice warm up for the following Monday, the 7th, which will be at this point the well field. And Sean McCrindle, the Chief Operating Officer of Basher Homes, will be our program. There's the announcements. Now, I'm beginning to reach the file's getting a little light. I'm reaching the bottom of the barrel with regard to jokes. And you'll notice that very soon. But along the educational theme today, what's the difference? Now, let's go with this. A teacher, this is a true story, at Elkhart High School noticed one of her students having a bit of an attitude issue. And so she looked at him and said, what's the difference between Ignorance and indifference. What's the difference between ignorance and indifference? This kid said, he shouted back, I don't know and I don't care. She said, you are absolutely right. Okay, what's the difference between a teacher and a train? The teacher says, spit out your gum. The train says, chew, chew, chew. Okay, that's the warm-up act. Now, our sergeant today, I'd love to say we have one of the most distinguished sergeants ever in the history of the club. I would love to say that. This one is just maybe one fry short of a Happy Meal, but his IQ test did come back negative, so that's good. Oh yeah, and he does, anyway, he thinks Dr. Fauci, he does not think Dr. Fauci is an Italian soda. But all the way from Wellfield Gardens, please join me in welcoming Eric Garten as our sergeant today.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Bill getting pumped up. That's just fantastic. All right. Thanks for the applause. That was underwhelming. It's terrific. So I just wanted to get back to remind everyone why we do these, why we do fines as donations. These all help support our community through the grants that we provide for not-for-profit organizations in our community. And this year, I know on behalf of Candy, I want to thank everyone. They've just done a great job with the donations committee and so many of you as volunteers and reviewing all of those. More to come on that, but thank you for that continued process. And by all means, certainly if you'd like to continue to donate, we can make those happen and continue to do good in our neighborhood. So that's what these bucks are for. Cash works, also a credit card online works, just so many convenient ways to part you from your dollars for the betterment of Elkhart. So in honor of Dr. Thalheimer being here, and just can't do any more bad jokes though, just can't do it. I wanted to talk a little about education today and talk about why in particular college is so important, and it's also more expensive than ever before. And I would certainly say that all of you would agree with me that education is an important thing. Just ask Dave Dygert, Mo Jacobson. I'm not going to drag you into this, Stephanie, in this front row right here. I'm just not going to do it. And education is an important thing. But in today's economy, higher education is no longer a luxury for the privileged few. It's a necessity for a lot of jobs and opportunity in America's competitiveness in a global economy. And at a time when jobs can go anywhere in the world, skills and education will determine success for individuals and for nations. As a result, a college education remains one of the best investments a student can make in his or her future. I wanted to give a few bits of statistics that we can talk about and call upon a few folks. So David Damero, according to the Department of Education, college graduates with a bachelor's degree typically earn, by percentage, how much more than those with only a high school diploma? And I will give you half a percentage point. The answer, what did you say, 40%? That was actually a pretty good, I'm not going to say guess. I'd say that was pretty good. So those with a bachelor's degree earn, on average, 66% more than those with only a high school diploma, and are also far less likely to face unemployment. So thank you for that, 40%. I'll raise you a couple bucks, and for guessing close, everyone in the spirit of pitching in for education is going to pitch in $1. Jim Story. Over the course of a lifetime, the average worker with a bachelor's degree will earn approximately how much more than a worker without a post-secondary education? I asked the banker. Jim is so attentive to details. I know that he's going to get this within $4. $4. Dang, that is not bad. It's Jim guessed 1.2. And the answer, according to the Department of Education, is the average worker with a bachelor's degree will earn approximately $1 million more than a worker without a post-secondary education. If I were better with my math, I would tell you what percentage you were off, but it was not too bad of a guess. Everyone, in the spirit of pitching in for education, please put in a buck. Let's see. Bill Reith.
Good call.
I know. Bill is all over this. While half of Americans from high-income families hold a bachelor's degree by age 25, what percentage from low-income families attain that same level of education? So talking high-income families versus low, the Department of Education statistics indicate that high-income families, half of those folks attain that bachelor's degree by the age of 25. What about those from low-income families?
6%.
You know, that's not too far off, Bill. And again, my lack of math skills with percentages, but it's just 10%. 1 in 10 people from low-income families attain that same level of a bachelor's degree in their education. So money sure makes a difference. Speaking of money, Bill pitch in a buck and everyone else pitch in a buck for that too. Let's see. Mel Jacobson, how are you? You sat as far away from me today as possible.
Not enough.
Not enough. Never far enough for the PA and all across the world on the internet. Low-income students, first-generation college students, and minority students in particular are being underserved by the current system. What percent of students from the lowest income quartile graduate with a bachelor's degree by age 24? There's some big words in there. I'm gonna read those again. What percentage of students from the lowest income quartile of low income, first generation, and minority students in particular graduate with a bachelor's degree by age 24? Oh, that was so long ago. All right. Oh, this is so close. In fact, I'm going to give it to you, and in the spirit of generosity, everyone's going to pitch in a buck, and you go without paying a buck on this one. Nice job, Mel. So just 9% of students from the lowest income quartile graduate with a bachelor's degree by age 24, compared to 77% from the top income quartile. So if we learn nothing more today, it's that I like to say the word quartile. Eric Ampt, what does FAFSA stand for?
It's been a long time. Federal Assistance Student something.
It is close to that, and you even had the S in there for something. FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and that's a form for financial aid for college or graduate school. Thank you, Eric, for that. And I like your creativity, so we're only going to find everyone else. That's good. All right. Todd Yoder, thank you for joining us and coming up from Goshen College today. What are the trends in the cost of college education? In the cost of education, yes. Will it increase suffice as a good part A of your answer? Increasing, yes. So Todd agrees, and I'm sure everyone knows that the cost of education is going up. We've got some statistics here from the National Center for Educational Statistics. I would like the other sergeants to note that given these important duties up here, you want to make sure, especially when you're talking about education, that you're citing your sources of this stuff. And I'm also going to concede to you that this was for the 2017-2018 academic year to fulfill the answer that Todd could, I'm sure, tell us, but we only have a limited amount of time, that the annual current dollar prices for undergraduate tuition fees, room and board, all that good stuff, were estimated at around $18,000 for public institutions, $46,000 at private nonprofit institutions, and $26,000 at private for-profit institutions. I found that fascinating that they include that. So for that little tidbit, I would love everyone to pitch in $1. And I also want to end with just a little perspective on what does the effect of increasing education levels, what effect does that have on philanthropy? And I'm sure you probably all know. But according to a study reported by Habitat for Humanity of Broward County, educated people understand how valuable it is to live in a stable and secure community. They are more prone to taking part in projects that will help improve not only their neighborhood, but society. In addition, when people are able to afford their own home, they're more likely to take part not only in improving their homes, but in solving local problems. After all, it is quite important to get involved and give a hand to the less fortunate ones in order to build a better place for all of us to live in. So with that said, if you have not maxed out already today, and thanks for those of you joining us online, and maybe today in particular, the acknowledgement of Elkhart Community Schools and the great job they've done. I can say that educating my own son, who is doing virtual school in the back of this building as we speak, that you'll consider an extra few bucks to increase our impact in the local community. Thank you all for your donations and your support and for your patience. Thanks, Bill.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Eric. Certainly one of the top sergeants, top 12 we've had this year. Absolutely. Dr. Steve Thalheimer, he's in his third year with the Elkhart Community Schools. He's been in education in Indiana effectively his entire career. It's been this area for 15 years. He started around Cincinnati, Ohio, Kentucky. I'm not sure why I have to describe the geography where Cincinnati is. But he was in that area. IU undergrad, University of Rochester for the master's, came back to Indiana for the advanced degree, and he's one of our own Rotarians. And so, as we know, you've seen the yes signs around, the no signs around, and I'll tell you that I put yes signs in our backyard, which is along Genewood Drive, and they were taken. I had to find them, repossess them. A banker does that sort of thing. And they're back on Genewood as of this morning, they were. So it's been interesting. And Steve, thank you for joining us today. So please welcome Dr. Steve Thalheimer. Thank you.
Thank you for having me today, and it is my pleasure to come and share with you some basic information regarding school funding, how that has impacted Elkhart Community Schools, why we're in the situation we are regarding the referendum question on the ballot tomorrow, and what we hope to achieve by being successful. So the difficulty that we have as a school district is the difficulty that many school districts have, in that national and state funding, particularly state funding, had not kept pace with the cost of educating children. And this landed us in a place where it was very difficult for us to live up to our Elkhart promise. The Elkhart promise is that we know every student by name, and in partnership with the community and our highly effective staff, that we're able to make students college, career, and life ready. The difficulty there is that if we are not able to stabilize our workforce and have people who can do this important work all across the board within our district, it becomes difficult for us to fulfill that mission. So very quickly, just as a reminder for everyone, the way that school funding works. Years ago, you may have seen a presentation regarding the buckets, and there were 5 different buckets, and funds from those buckets couldn't be intermingled. And the legislature decided that that was like not complicated enough. So they decided that we needed to move to a system where we now have 2 barrels. So the education fund there on the left is how we get our dollars that are necessary for what happens in our classrooms. And that education fund is driven by a complicated 8-page formula that the legislature votes on every couple of years. And it's also dominated by our student count. On the right-hand side is an operations fund, and that is the fund that pays for everything outside of direct classroom instruction for students. So that's where you'll find our operations, taking care of our buildings and facilities, and where district administration is paid for. That is impacted by property taxes, and so that is impacted by your assessed valuation and by the property tax caps. So in the old days, we used to have dollars that came into the general fund. So when those dollars, tax dollars from income tax and from sales tax were collected in Indianapolis, run through the formula and distributed out to us, those general fund dollars would come to us and we had a specific way to spend them. Now those general fund dollars come into us and by law all have to go into the education fund. So that funding formula, again, driven by student count and the way the legislature sets it up, mean that those dollars have to go into the education fund. However, as I just indicated, there are certain expenses that are paid out of the operations fund, secretarial, custodial, district administration. So what we have to do by law is transfer amounts from the education fund over to the operations fund. For us, that's about 12% of those dollars that come in. The other 88 to 90 to 87-ish in there stay in the education fund to pay directly for classrooms. The state likes to see that 12%. What for us is 12%, they like to see that at about 15 or less. So we are in good stead because we average in that 12 to maybe 13% range. When you pay your property tax, the other 3 funds that used to be separate buckets but are now jumbled together become the transportation, capital projects, and bus replacement fund. These are the funds that direct our ability to maintain transportation for students, purchase new school buses, and take care of grounds, facilities, and equipment and technology. Those are all driven by property tax and thus are considered levied funds. The funds in these 2 barrels can go back and forth as necessary to meet your budget expenditures. If you're fortunate enough to have extra money in one or the other bucket or barrel, you can use it to meet costs in the other one, but that's if you have extra dollars. We do not find ourselves in that situation. Part of the reason for this is I want to direct your attention to the way that the school funding formula has worked and not in Elkhart Community Schools' favor over the last 7 years. So going back to 2014-15, if you look at that blue line, you will notice that we have about $45.87 with a couple $100 for a full day kindergarten grant. That $4,800 in there is how much we were receiving per pupil. All schools across the state of Indiana receive that foundation amount per pupil. Over that 7 years, you will notice that it jumped to $57.03. Again, the foundation amount for every student in every school district, regardless. Over that same time period, in order to pay for that increase, the legislature took away from a piece of the funding formula called the complexity index, indicated by the red line. The red line was a component of the funding formula that was taking into account the added expense for high poverty districts, whether those are rural poor districts or urban districts with a lot of diversity and a lot of need. That piece of the funding formula was there, and you notice it goes from 1,600 down to 800, basically cut in half over that time period. So while we were getting a little bit, around $1,000 trending up, we were getting over $800 trending down. So for us, if you look at the yellow line across the top, you will notice that over that time period, we went up about $100 per pupil. And we all know that funding expenses all went up during that time. When I was at Fairfield Schools, that blue line would have trended up over this time period, and that red line would have hardly gone down because of the free reduced lunch count of 24%. So districts like Penn, Zionsville, Noblesville, Fairfield didn't have this flat line funding because as their blue line went up, their red line did not go down as precipitously. Urban districts like Anderson, Muncie, Indianapolis Public Schools, Elkhart, all saw that flatlining because the complexity index was taken out of the formula in order to pay for the line up. So it was a reverse Robin Hood of taking from the districts that most needed those funds in order to fund it for everybody. So that left us in a situation where it is important to realize the trends and the cuts that we have had to make as a school district. And I will say right now that I have had people in positions who know better, who have accused me of lying and fixing these numbers, and this is not the case at all. Anybody can go to the state Board of Accounts website for Form 9 and see these expenditure totals. And what I am telling you here is the truth based on amounts that we report to the state and get audited. So as you go down that left-hand side, you'll see our trend in our enrollment from 2019 back to 2009. And over that decade, you will notice that we went from spending $172 million down to $154 million. We've spent $18.2 million less, or about a 10.6% cut in what we've spent on education. So when people are saying that we just continue to spend and we aren't reining that in and we aren't watching what we're doing, simply not true. The other thing to note is back in 2012, we had almost the same student count as we did in 2019, right before the pandemic. For the same number of students, we're spending $8 million less than we were in 2012. And if you look at the very top right-hand corner, our amount of expenditures per pupil are the lowest $2 amount whole chart. So we've made cuts because the dollars aren't there simply to do what we need to do. That's all impacting the education barrel. On the operations barrel, we have the property tax cap issue. So if you look at this chart, this indicates over roughly that same period of time what we were experiencing in property tax caps. So when people hit that 1% threshold on their personal property income tax or property tax, they did not have to pay anymore. So what that does for us is we've settled in this range of about $3.5 million a year that we don't receive for our operations barrel. This means carpet, repairing fences, taking care of buildings, painting, some technology needs, all of those pieces, in addition to transportation. So when people are saying to us, again, you just need to cut, well, when we're $3.5 million short already in our property tax collections because of property tax caps, that means over this time period, we're over $44.5 million that we don't have to meet the facility and transportation needs of the district. Outside of those two big barrels, we have some other barrels. Debt service. One thing that I get hit with all the time is, well, if you just wouldn't build all those darn buildings, you'd be able to pay people. The problem is that all of those buildings are funded through a bond issue, and we borrow money, and it becomes like the district mortgage. Dollars in the debt service fund cannot be used to pay people. I will say this for those of you in the back. Dollars from the debt service fund cannot be used to pay people. You do that and you get in trouble like Muncie Community Schools did. So the building projects that we did standalone and our facilities for kids and the educational programs we want to do, I could not direct those dollars to pay for people. And in the instance of the Engineering, Technology, and Innovation Center that we have between the former Memorial Building and the Career Center, that building was done through public-private partnerships, where actually in the end, we ended up paying for less than half of the cost of that building because of grants, the Mittler family donation, and work with the Community Foundation. So all of those things are showing a responsiveness and a responsibility to getting us what our community needs and to make sure that we're meeting those. Grants, donations, and the referendum are all ways to supplement what's maybe lacking in both that education and operations fund. I'll talk about grants here in a moment. Donations come into specific purposes. We've had some very generous donations in terms of that ETI building, athletics, the band program, new uniforms for our choir and band programs. But again, all of those are donor intent, and we try to honor those and where those come. And the referendum question is the final thing that we land at. When we look at the 13 recommendations that were given to individual school districts in the December report on the teacher compensation recommendations. In their generosity, the state provided us 13 recommendations of things that we could do as a school district. We've done all of them, except ask our community for an operating referendum to help pay our employees more. And when we talk to legislators about the need for more dollars and to help make sure that we're keeping track of where and on trend with what we need to be paying people, their response always is, if you don't feel like you have enough dollars, ask your community for a referendum. So in terms of those grants, Title I grants are for at-risk students. So for our highest need schools with the highest free reduced lunch counts, Title I helps us fill in some of those gaps. However, these dollars cannot be used to spend on regular core academic mission. These can be used for professional development. These can be used for coaching. These can be used to do pull-out programs with kids or extended year or day programs, but I can't use them to pay a third grade teacher. You'll notice the trend here that those federal dollars have trailed off and continue to decline. Still, over $3 million that helps us do some great things across some of our schools, but it doesn't help all of our schools, and I can't use it for normal expenses. 3 other federal grants that we have are Title II, Title III, and Title IV. You'll notice that Title II up at the top, which we use for professional development, kind of flatlined across this time period. Title IV, the yellow line, which is used for social and emotional well-being for students and whole child development, kind of flatlines at $250,000. And the red line, Title III, which is to support students for whom English is not their first language, Title III, that red line is going down at particularly the same time when our number of English language learners within the district is increasing. Which brings us to CARES, my favorite subject in the whole wide world. When you look at these dollars, these are just like the other federal dollar and federal grant programs that I just commented on. In the CARES Act, if you come here and look at the IDOE's suggested uses, you will notice as you look at this list of what's on here, that when we talk about staff, notice in here where it talks about additional teachers and additional support. Staff to start the school year and lengthen the school day or the school year. These are additional positions above and beyond our core staff. So when people are saying, hey, you're getting all these millions of dollars, you don't need the referendum. Again, these dollars are for a specific purpose and for a specific period of time, which I'll talk about in a moment. You can also use these for technology, for cleanliness and facility, taking care of your facilities, social and emotional well-being for students, and some things related to career tech. But the important thing about these dollars is that when we look at those, again, specific period of time. So the first CARES Act dollars that came available to us a little over a year ago were during the time when we were closed down. And we've used these to pay for PPE. We've used these to pay for sanitation. We've used these to pay for teachers who are teaching purely virtually and to cover the cost of our emergency leave that we gave staff. One of the other things I've been hit with is, well, during the time that you were closed down a year ago, doesn't that mean that you saved a whole lot of money, and why didn't you just let people go? You should have just laid people off. First of all, we didn't because it wasn't the right thing to do. Secondly, we didn't do it because if we would have laid those people off, it's difficult enough for us to find employees. Do you think they would have come back? And then thirdly, notice here under eligibility that we had to the greatest extent possible keep our people employed in order to be eligible for these dollars. So just like the PPP program that nonprofits and businesses had, we had the same stipulation on us for this. The other 2 amounts that we just received, I've been accused of saying that we knew these dollars were coming and we hid this from the public. We did not know these dollar amounts were coming to us until late March and into early April when we received our final allocation for ESSER 2. And we didn't receive our notification about our planning grant for ESSER 3 until April 15th, well past any deadlines for filing for the referendum. These dollars, again, while massive amounts of money, have to go for extra things that we would do for students beyond the school day or for programs to mitigate learning loss or to take care of our facilities so that we're better able to manage airflow, HVAC systems, and mechanicals. So with our ESSER 2 dollars that we're working on a grant right now that's due in a little bit more than a week, is that we will do a whole lot of summer school in all of our elementary buildings, more than we've done in years. We're doing a lot of credit recovery for students in the high school who need to make sure that they get back on track for graduation after perhaps getting off track during e-learning and all of that time. We're putting in place a young adult program, employability program, where our students in their late teens and early 20s who are still with us because of their disability will have an opportunity to run a small business in order to prove their work ethic and employability skills so that they can leave us and go get a job in the private sector. We're looking at after-school programs, including an art depot where students will be able to hang out after school, do credit recovery, work on their homework, and have a place to be, several of whom are homeless and need a place to be after school. And in addition to that, we're also rolling out curricular programs and new curriculum, doing a lot of professional development on those programs because we kind of got a year behind in terms of rolling out that curriculum because of the delays due to the pandemic. So yes, while there is $40 million here, very specific purposes, short period of time, I can't use it to meet core expenses in paying for a high school chemistry teacher, for example, because these dollars, as you can see, all will run out by December of 2024. Just very quickly, if you look at the per pupil spending of the states around us, this is from the Next Level Teacher Compensation Report that the state put out in December. You will notice back in 2018 that Kentucky passed Indiana in how much we were spending per pupil. And when you look at national versus Indiana starting teacher salary, you'll notice around the Great Recession, 2008, 2010, in that area, that we had a little bit of a dip nationally in the yellow line, and inflation outpaced national salaries. But the state of Indiana around that time plateaued and stayed there. Because of all that, we've made significant cuts. And so people are saying, you know, you're administratively heavy. You don't need all those people sitting around at the service center peeling grapes and watching soap operas. So why don't you make some cuts? This is what we've done over the last few years. So when the same board meeting when I was approved in December of 2018, the board had made the decision to eliminate or reduce 10 administrative positions. I carried those out in my first months here, and by the time we arrived in June of 2019, those contracts had expired or been reclassified. I knew that we were going to need a principal for our Engineering, Technology, and Innovation Center to be on site there. And I also knew from work that I had done that our high ability program needed some serious work to become of the caliber that our community deserved. So knowing that I was going to need those two positions, when I had two district level positions from our instructional leadership department resign and retire, I didn't replace them. So it was a kind of a trade-off in personnel. And ever since 2018, we've kept a running spreadsheet of administrators who've been with us and have left, and then who we replaced them with. And over that time period, we've reduced that cost by $1.2 million in eliminating positions, in hiring people with less experience, and all of those things. So over this time period, since about 2018, we've reduced the cost of our administration by nearly $2 million. In addition to the cuts that we've made in staffing, attrition, when our student count goes down, we don't replace teachers who retire or resign. We've moved to a high deductible health plan. We have an energy conservation plan in place that's saving us over $1.5 million against baseline. So we've done everything that we can possibly do along those lines to control our costs. So if I can just take a moment to share about the recent state budget. So everybody's saying, well, all of this money that's coming to you now because the state solved everything with this $1.9 million increase. It ain't all so, folks. So when you look at the $1.9 billion increase, there's a lot of attention paid to the $600,000 figure that's going to help with teacher salaries. That $600,000 does not come to public school districts. The $600 million, is going to pay for paying down pension debt that the state borrowed from years ago. So there's this obligation for the state to be paying back and paying into the teacher retirement fund. And that's taking a big chunk of money every year. So they're using some federal dollars to pay that down so they're not having to pay it, which frees up dollars to then be given to education, but it's not directly coming to us at this point. There's also a student learning recovery grant that's taking 150 million of that, but we're being told you can only apply for that after you spend your CARES money. So once I burn through nearly $40 million, then I can have my share of this. The Choice Scholarship Program. So the money going to vouchers so that people who are attending private schools can have a higher threshold. So wealthier people are now going to be eligible to take care of these choice scholarships, take advantage of these choice scholarships. Not that there's more of a demand in Elkhart Community Schools District. Over the last 4 years, we have around 400 students who take advantage of this option, and that remains pretty steady every time we do a student count. So there's not a higher demand in our area, but there are in some other places in the state, and by raising the threshold, they're going to make more people eligible. So what that's going to do is steer money that could have been coming to Elkhart and Elkhart County schools and this area where there isn't as much demand as there is in maybe Gary or Indianapolis. But because it all gets taken off the top at the beginning, it goes into that and we don't see it. So what this basically boils down to is that there is an $873 million increase that's going to funds. And the Legislative Services Agency, so if you go to the Indiana State Republicans website and you click on their budget, right here underneath this, there is the funding formula. So this will show you what the state total is. And then if you scroll down through here, it shows you every individual school district so that you can see what their projected increases are. For us, since we're doing it through Eric, I can't show you that. But what I did is I went through and looked at every one of those. Statewide, that dollar increase of that 873 million is almost a 12% increase over what's anticipated to go out to schools now. Elkhart Community Schools, when you look at our projections over the next 2 years, we're at 10.63. So yet again, we receive less than the state average of what's going to be happening in funding because they didn't fix the complexity index issue. The red line from way back at the beginning, they didn't fix that issue. They're only putting $100 more per student in that. So by the time you carry that out, what that means for us is we are below average for the state, and the districts that we're trying to be competitive with, 13, 14% increases. So that leads us to our ask. We're asking for 38.5 cents on the 100 from our taxpayers in order for us to generate $15.25 million a year so that we can concentrate on 3 things. One thing that's really important for people to remember and know about this is that of the 38.5 cents, we're asking for the transportation referendum from 2014 to be renewed. So in your property tax bills currently, you are already paying 13.15 cents of this. So it is just an increase of 25.35. Our goals are to increase compensation for all our employees, reduce our out-of-pocket health insurance costs, and to renew that transportation piece. The breakdown here would be 7.35 million in the compensation piece, 3 million for insurance, and our current transportation referendum is generating about 4.9 that goes into our operations fund. For a median homeowner in the district, 122,000 roughly on that home. The total ask with standard deductions on that 38.5 cents is just a touch over $181. Again, if we back out what people are already paying so that you know your increase, then that's about $62 that comes off of that. So it's an increase of 119 over what people are currently paying for that 25-cent ask, which comes out to about $10 a month. This chart represents some other values so that you can kind of see maybe where you fall if you're a little closer to that. And down at the bottom on commercial and rental property per 100,000, dividing by 100, taking it times that rate, it comes out to $385. But again, about a third of that's already being paid for. So it's roughly $250 per 100,000. So our priorities. The difficulty for us is that we spend time investing in the people that we hire into the district. Those folks come in, we give them professional development. They look around a few years later and they're like, I can go over there and make more. I could go over there and make more. And they take that expertise with them. We have a difficult time training up people who know their craft and then stay with us so that they can do the work of professional learning communities. How do I teach English learners? How do I take care of and help students manage their behaviors within an urban setting with at-risk kids? So we do that, and we basically become the farm team for other school districts because they take that expertise and go somewhere else. We have about 40% of our certified staff who over the past 3.5 to 4 years have left us, and they take that expertise with them. The major concern also is what this means for our programming. So our high ability program has been rebooted, and we have those high ability teachers. The second thing is that at our Career Center and our early college program, we have people who need very specific credentials and educational and training backgrounds to do those programs. Right now, our early college program saves families thousands of dollars, where they don't have to pay for their freshman year. If those students earn that full early college certificate, they have a year of college out of the way when they go away. And our career tech programs at the Career Center allow students to go right into work with their certifications and their credentialing to be able to do the work that's necessary there. All of that is in danger if we can't attract those people to come and work with us and stay with us. Those early college instructors are poached away by other districts because they're highly sought after. You don't just have a master's in education to do that work, you have to have a master's in the content area. For our beginning teacher salary, you'll notice over here on the left-hand side, Penn and Wani are up there in the $40,000 club. South Bend has committed to getting to that line. And the important thing to know about this new state budget is that we are going to be asked to get to 40,000 with the new dollars that are coming from the state budget. Okay, we'll have the dollars to get to 40,000, but are Wani and Penn going to stay there? No, they'll go to 42 or 43. So all it's done is shift the issue. For us to be competitive, we still need those dollars in order to be able to do that. And for our hourly staff, it's even more dire. So Region 2, north central part of the state, has done a survey. The Region 2 average there in the center column of the starting salaries for those various positions, and we're along the right-hand side. This is why our board has committed that with these referendum funds, we would at least move these hourly rates $1 an hour in order to be able to get closer to the regional averages and be competitive in those areas. Our second priority is to help take care of our insurance difficulties that we've had. Years ago, we got into a situation of adverse selection where only the people most in need of the plan stayed on the plan because of the cost. In order for us to fix that, we've been working with a consultant who over the past several years has helped us kind of keep those costs down. We've had some positive experience that has helped us to do that, but we still can't be competitive. We've had some people who are willing to take a job with us by being paid less, but in order to come, when they hear the insurance amount, then they have to tell us no. And finally, our third piece is our transportation piece. This would allow us to be able to keep our walk zones small, to be able to continue to do field trips once we're post-COVID and can take our kids on educationally related experiences. And it's allowed us to pay our bus drivers competitively. And an interesting thing to note here is during the pandemic, and we've been able to keep our bus fleet fully staffed because we've been competitive in pay. And so what this has shown us is in microcosm, what can happen if we pay competitively and we bring people on board to our mission. So when people say to me in the bottom line, Tallheimer, what does this mean for achievement? Your schools have some work to do and we need to do better. Yes, we do. But the difficulty is that until we stabilize that workforce and get people who are committed to being in our mission, we will always have a bench of rookies. And we know how difficult it is to win when you've got a bench full of rookies. So our goal is to stabilize that workforce and we take care of our people. Then secondly, we build our building leaders to have the capacity to lead for our various initiatives. And we've been working on that consistently since I've been there, and particularly over the past year in the background of the pandemic. And then the third thing is for us to dig in and make sure that our tier 1 instruction is solid. We have solid curricular materials, that we know how we're assessing kids, we know what they know and can do, and that we're also taking care of their social and emotional needs, and we're also meeting the needs of English learners. So for us to do all that, we have to bring those people on board and we have to take care of them. We will continue to vow to work with the public, to work with our employers in the area to make sure that we're preparing students for the jobs that they need. Our Career Center, our advisory boards for our schools of study are all tuned into what that is. But the important thing is that for that partnership to work, right now, we need the community's help. If people need information or would like to kind of experiment for themselves about what the cost can be, you can go to strongerelkhart.com. And at that website, you have the ability to go in and see for cost down here that there is a cost calculator that you can run. You can also see the taxpayer impact. So that green chart that I had is available there. There's also an FAQ section, and then all of the goals of the referendum are outlined here as I presented in the presentation.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job. Have time for maybe one, maybe two questions, if anybody has anything. Out the back?
I'm curious, how close do you get if the referendum passes to closing the gap? It doesn't strike me that with other school districts so far ahead at this point that you're going to get there, but I'm at least curious how much closer you get.
And Steve, if you repeat the
Sure.
question.
So the question is how close would we get at closing the gap? So when we're looking at what the state's providing us, it's interesting that in the teacher compensation report, they say that they should pay off the full $946 million that's the obligation from the state, and the state only put $600 million in. So I'm not sure how they're saying that every district's going to be able to get to that 40,000 when they didn't give all the money that the teacher recommendation report was saying. So little iffy on that. But for us, we should be able to get to 40,000, and we'll need to be competitive. Then the question is, what can we do beyond that? But for us, all of those dollars and all that conversation about teacher compensation is about teacher compensation. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of our hourly people as well. So it will close the gap. But again, if we're only getting a 10% increase and Awanee's getting a 14% increase, that's going to be difficult for us. I mean, we will obviously get more in raw dollars, but proportionally, we're not getting as much as another district. So it also will depend on how many students come back to us this fall in terms of enrollment. I mean, we did lose several hundred students because of the pandemic, as many urban districts did. So for us, it will be a matter of how many of those students come back, and we might be in a slightly better shape than what the illustrations are.
Eric, anything online?
No, and I'm monitoring online because of Sisters Chat.
And one more, if so, we're about out of time, but.
Yeah.
Is this just for properties in the school district?
Within the school district. Only property owners within the school district are eligible to vote.
So the people that get the vote, that's their district.
Yes.
Because I'm out of the district and I can't vote.
Right.
So I'm not in it.
Right. Only people who live within the boundaries of Elkhart Community Schools can vote.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
I will be around and lingering over here if people have any individual questions. And thank you so much for your time and for your support of the district.
Thank you so much, Steve. You covered a lot of information, very complex in a short amount of time. So thank you. And our closing quote today is, you can Google for an answer. You can Google for a mate. You can Google for a career, but you can't Google for what's in your heart. The passion that lifts you skyward. With that, have an amazing week, a successful week, learn something, and Rotary is adjourned.